Hello and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Dan Moulthrop. I'm the Chief Executive here at the City Club and also a proud member of the City Club. It's my honor to welcome all of you to our debate between the candidates for Ohio's 9th Congressional District. In an election season when many incumbents have declined invitations to debate, we are heartened to see Democratic Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur here to debate her challenger, Republican Party candidate Richard May. Congresswoman Kaptur has represented the district since 1983. Mr. May jumped into politics in 1997 after a career in the world of journalism. If you're not familiar with the 9th Congressional District, few other congressional districts can so credibly claim to represent the North Coast. At the western end, the district encompasses most of Toledo, and heading eastward, it includes cities along Lake Erie, Port Clinton, Sandusky, Huron, Vermilion, Lorain, and so on, into Cuyahoga County, where it grabs Bay Village, Rocky River, and Lakewood, and then south to include much of Cleveland's far west side and Parma. When it comes to the geography of the district, its most important feature, however, may be the water. The district includes a good portion of the U.S. side of Lake Erie's western basin, the site of many of the problems plaguing Lake Erie in recent years. Here to help us negotiate the issues in the district is the host of the Sound of Ideas on 90.3 WCPN Idea Stream and a columnist for the Plain Dealer and also a resident of the 9th District, Mike McIntyre.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all very much for coming. And Congresswoman and Mr. May, thank you both for being here. I could say for all of us here in the room that it's a real relief for us that you didn't contract that nasty virus we've been hearing about in the media so much lately. And by that, I mean the one that renders you unwilling to engage in debate prior to an election like this one. It's rampant, apparently, in some of the incumbent offices. So glad both of you are here. And I'm going to review the rules quickly for the audience. Both of our candidates will begin with a 3-minute opening. After that, the order was, and they'll do it in a certain order, the same order at the beginning and at the end. That was determined in a coin toss earlier. Marcy Kaptur will go first, Richard May will go second. After the opening statements, we're going to go into questions from me. Questions directed to both candidates will receive a 90-second response from each. Questions to a specific candidate will receive a 90-second response from that candidate and a 30-second rebuttal from the opponent. This format will continue in the second half of the program when you get to ask the questions from the audience. And lastly, I will ask a final summative question of both candidates. They'll have 3 minutes each to respond and wrap up the debate. Throughout the debate, candidates will be notified they have 15 seconds remaining, and when their time is up, Dan's going to be handling that there right at the front table with the yellow and red cards. Assuming everyone is ready, let's begin. Question starts for both of you, and I'll ask Marcy Kaptur to give the first part of the answer, your 90 seconds. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you a question in a moment, but first I'd like to have your opening statements. My question is, what is your opening statement? And that begins with Congresswoman Kaptur.
Thank you, Mike, very much, and to the City Club of Cleveland for your century of dedication as the citadel of free speech in our region of America. Thank you to the audience that is here today and to the listening audience who seek to inform themselves as engaged citizens. I seek your support in the upcoming election as the representative from the 9th District to the U.S. House of Representatives. The 9th District, as was stated, is the Lake Erie District, and quite frankly, our region is the most sustainable place on the face of the earth. The recent water crisis, however, on the lake is a wake-up call to us all. Maybe that's why this district was formed, so it would fall right into my lap, because of what has happened for 4.5 days. 500,000 people had no potable water. This traumatic event should be another burning river moment calling us to action, like a fire bell in the night. Lake Erie is sick again, and we have to save it, just as we did with the passage of the Clean Water Act. The very same Clean Water Act that my opponent's party is trying to dismantle and attack inside the Congress of the United States. Now, I just wanted to mention, in terms of our economy, that also suffered a massive heart attack in 2008, as everyone here knows. It's still recovering, but we've had job growth every month, including the most recent one, thanks to the policies of President Obama and the Democrats in Congress, despite the vehement opposition from the other side. We know that when jobs exist in our country and when Americans work, America works. And that is why Come Back Cleveland is truly the resilient coast. There's new optimism here. There's new energy here. LeBron James is coming home. We know here we make things, we mend people, and we invent the future. Manufacturing, healthcare, innovation. We've seen the auto industry come back strongly, and that means jobs in Cleveland, in Parma, in Avon Lake, in Brook Park, and yes, Toledo. And we've seen NASA Glenn lead the way on innovation and commercialization with those high-tech jobs being resident here. And we've seen tremendous growth in the healthcare sector, including biomedicine, and on the environmental front with the dedication of the Ohio and Erie Canal extension to the Scranton Flats. We have the possibility of expanded tourism all across Lake Erie's beautiful coast. Now, I must say as a woman that we also have to make progress for all people in our society, and here's an interesting statistic. Since Ohio became a state in the Union, 443 of our citizens have served as U.S. representatives and senators. 11 of them have been women. I am the fourth of those women. My time is up, and I will allow my opponent in the election to say his piece and continue other points in the question period.
Same question for you, Mr. May. Do you have an opening statement?
Yes, it's right here. Good afternoon. The 9th District, and especially the city of Toledo, is not better off today than when Marcy Kaptur was first elected to Congress 32 years ago. Our cities, Toledo, Sandusky, Lorain, and Cleveland, have lost population, are blighted, and poverty is rising. When Marcy was first elected, our national debt was $1 trillion. Today, it is approaching $18 trillion. And when this bill comes due, it will, our children will rightly condemn us. Then there is the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, if you will.
Mr. Mayor,
Which-
your microphone is
Oh.
not on.
Do we have to start over again?
No, I think everybody heard you, but
Okay. I project well is what you're saying, huh?
Congresswoman's mic picked it up. Is that better? Okay.
All right. Everyone can hear now?
A lot of wacky hijinks for one.
Thank you. The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, if you will, which Marcy Kaptur voted for without reading it, or even reading a decent Cliff Notes summary of it. Look, we're all living with Obamacare, and there's only 2 or 3 of us here or listening that are really undecided about it. But for those 3 people, and open-minded, allow me to remind you, Congress and its staff are exempt from Obamacare, including Marcy and her staff. President Obama delayed the start of it a number of times. Gee, do we wonder why? And he removed certain corporations from this law, like McDonald's, by executive order. I will work to repeal Obamacare and replace it with a bipartisan health care reform that all Americans can embrace, including Congress and its staff. Concerning this district's core issue of urban decay, the basic reason for businesses and citizens to move out of our cities is the culture of poverty found in our urban areas. How can we change this? One proposal I have is to offer more government assistance to those receiving it for productive behavior. For example, are they going to college? Great. Have a bit more in their benefits. Is the child doing well in school? With fine test scores and grades? Great. That family gets a bit more. Just like a business, an employer can pay a good employee more than another employee in that same job. Why should we treat a good family that simply needs some help like a bad family, like the police knows far too well? This, along with other proposals, will will transform our cities into areas businesses and people will want to live and invest in. I am Richard May. I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your opening statements. And now I will get to the question and answer period. And since Mr. May brought this up, I'll ask this question of both of you and ask Marcy Kaptur to answer first. In regards to Obamacare and its implementation, Medicaid expansion was accomplished in Ohio by a Republican governor, but a Republican legislature, which must vote this year to continue it, isn't quite sold. What are your thoughts on Medicaid expansion, and what course of action would be best for your constituents?
Well, first of all, the Affordable Care Act was an extraordinary achievement for the country. Yes, we have to be concerned about 40 million Americans who had no health insurance. The major reason for bankruptcy in our country is people can't pay their health bills because someone in their family has cerebral palsy, or they have epilepsy, or they have a disabling mental illness. Every family has members that they love who have these conditions. It's unfair to place to say that they aren't equal Americans. They actually are more than equal because of what they're enduring. So I think the Affordable Care Act puts us on a different path as a country. I did read the bill, by the way. You were incorrect in Port Clinton when you said there were 2,000 pages. There were 904 pages. I not only read it, I amended it. And the staff and members of Congress are absolutely in the exchange. We have to be. Every American has to select a private plan. In terms of Medicaid, I supported Governor Kasich's inclusion of citizens in Ohio who qualify for Medicaid, and I would urge the legislature to do the same. Not all states have done that, and it is one of the big issues. It is one of the big differences between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party believes in health care for all. The Republican Party believes in health care for those that can afford it.
Mr. May.
I sit here as someone covered by Governor Kasich's expansion of Medicare. And that does not make me a hypocrite, because that expansion in Medicaid is not going to be paid by me. It's going to be paid by the young people at the School of the Arts over here. Your generation, the generation over here is going to pay for my Medicaid expansion. Before Medicaid expansion, I was covered by Metro Health here in Cuyahoga County. And I was being taken care of by the budget of Cuyahoga County. And I was going to be fine. Now, I'm fine, but it's going to be paid for by national debt that the next generation will have to pay for. And that is simply irresponsible. And that's all I got to say about that.
If I could just ask you a quick follow-up on that. If you
Please.
were covered by the county's health care system and now
Yes.
by a federal health care system administered through the state, what's the difference? Someone else still has to pay the bill, right? And I wonder how you see a difference in
but the Cuyahoga County has to balance its budget. Cuyahoga County and the county government, wherever the next county executive is, they have to balance their budget. The federal budget, infamously, is not balanced. So what is being paid for my care now is being paid by the next generation, not current taxpayers in Cuyahoga County. That's the big difference, and it's a huge difference.
Mentioned by Mr. May, we have a table here of kids from the Cleveland School of the Arts, students there. Welcome to the debate. Glad you're here. Let me switch gears a little bit to the point that Dan Moulthrop was making at the beginning of this debate, which was the importance of the lake to this district. It rides the lake all the way from Toledo to Cleveland. Blue-green algae shut down the water system in Toledo for several days. You mentioned that in your opening, Congresswoman Kaptur. What action needs to be taken to ensure the safety of our water, and what role does government play in that?
Do I answer first?
I will ask you that question first.
All right. In my opinion, we have to make sure that the Clean Water Act is strong and funded. Immediately, here on the coast, we have to bring the scientific equipment for measuring water quality up to the lakefront. Those samples from Toledo were sent down to Cincinnati, up to the Sioux Locks, up in Michigan, and over to Reynoldsburg, Ohio. We wasted almost 2 days in testing. That cannot happen again on the lake. We also have to have testing protocols that those operating these plants fully understand, equipment in the plants to take samples and so forth. That didn't happen in the Toledo situation. Then what we need to do is we need to understand the sources. It isn't just the water plants, but it's the watersheds that are bleeding into the lake all kinds of nutrients and toxins. We have 24 combined sewer overflows. We have to find a way to fund the remediation of those. We also have to find a way to deal with agricultural runoff, as the Western Basin is 85% agriculture, and every year 43,000 boxcar loads of manure are dumped into that watershed in one form or another. There are 2 million people that live in it and 10 million animals minimum, and we have an incredible task ahead of us in getting a tri-state bi-national watershed to work together. The Thames River in Ontario and the Detroit River all impact our water quality. We need a structure, a legal structure, almost like a Tennessee Valley Authority, but something smaller because it's a smaller region, to be an umbrella over us so we can task ourselves to meet the true challenges ahead. And that will involve everyone's cooperation to be successful.
Mr. May, can I have a 30-second rebuttal to that?
When, I've heard the Congresswoman respond to this situation during the crisis, she took the opportunity to say, well, we need to build a new water plant in Toledo. Do I remember correctly, Congresswoman? And this is an issue of competence. That is the major thing we must do. And, we need to defer to the Ohio EPA under Governor Kasich and the national EPA to make certain that it's done correctly and cost efficiently.
Richard May, this one's for you first. Manufacturing is an essential part of the economy in the 9th District. How would you approach growing the manufacturing sector here?
One, I received a survey from the National Manufacturers Association, and they proudly told me they had 12 million workers in a nation of 330 million Americans. Boy, do we need to grow manufacturing all throughout the United States. And what we need is, right to work. That's one very important part. We need to encourage the owners of manufacturing to come here. We need, better education. Manufacturing is not an unskilled labor force anymore. It requires a great deal of computer skills. So it's education, it's being able to, and also let's not forget, we have to reduce regulation in manufacturing, because as we compete with China for manufacturing jobs, the American worker can compete with China. But the problem is, regulations is the major roadblock to being competitive with foreign nationals. So, thank you.
Marcy Kaptur, your rebuttal.
We have to innovate in the manufacturing sector, and we have to invest in it. We have to build on our strengths. We start with the automotive and steel industries, so essential to this region. We look at Ford bringing back to the Ohio Assembly Facility in Avon Lake production, heavy truck production that had been in Mexico. That is a real coup for us. We look at the modernization of companies like Alcoa, the press that is there. We have to keep looking at ways to make ourselves more competitive. Making it in the USA adds more bang to our economy than any other industry, and NASA is vital to us in terms of signing contracts for innovation with a range of firms that can commercialize very high tech into our manufacturing sector.
Let's move on to another topic. This is for both of you. Congress has gotten nowhere on immigration reform. And I wonder, what changes to immigration policy do you believe need to be made, and how would you go about actually enacting reform? Marcy Kaptur, you can take that one first. It's for both of you.
All right. Well, first of all, we have a bill, Comprehensive Immigration Reform, ready to be voted on in the House. The most important act we could take as Ohioans is get the Speaker, who comes from Ohio, to bring the bill to the floor. Regardless of how people vote, we have a right to vote on that bill. It has festered for far too long. And I think there are some who believe you can do this in a piecemeal way. Well, look at Cleveland. Look at our country. We are an extraordinarily diverse nation. We have people here from all over the world. And we have to embrace them all in immigration reform. It's long overdue. So long as people are here, they have with their background checks, they have no felony records, they want to make a contribution to our country, they are productive citizens, we want to give them legal standing. And I might say finally that the real issue of labor trafficking that undergirds a lot of the individuals who are here in undocumented situations is hardly ever talked about in this debate. It is central to the debate. And we ought to have a labor compact that embraces for sure the Americas and any country where we have individuals who are here who are working under very, very oppressive circumstances because of their legal status. So I support comprehensive immigration reform. I also support the fair treatment of workers regardless of where they might come from.
Richard May, on immigration policy, do you believe any changes need to be made? And if so, how would you go about actually getting those changes made?
I actually do not believe we really need that much change. We need to enforce the laws we have now. We have, plenty of people who can do any kind of work in America. We really do not need, thousands, millions of people coming through Mexico and, being unable. We have to raise a generation of children if we keep these children coming in from the southern border. That's another task for our debt, to take under that our young people here are going to have to pay for. We need, this is a nation of immigrants, but it's legal immigrants, not illegal immigrants. We can discuss having a pathway to citizenship for those who have been here and proven to be productive. But we still have to enforce the laws we have right now. And at the risk of being snarky, Congresswoman, would you please pass your comment about voting on bills to Senate President Reid? He's blocking 380 bills, most of which you voted along as well in Congress, to get that unblocked in the Senate so that we can pass the legislation that your Congress passed and get those voted on in the United States Senate.
Let's talk about the district both of you would like to run. The 9th District, after its change in the last election, has been called the mistake by the lake. Apparently, since the old Cleveland Municipal Stadium is gone, something had to take that title. It's also been called one of the top 5 ugliest districts due to gerrymandering. And on this stage, no fewer than 5 speakers have called for redistricting reform, including former Congressman Mickey Edwards, an Oklahoma Republican, now at the Aspen Institute. I wonder what your thoughts are on redistricting reform. I'll start with Richard May. The question's for both of you. Does there need to be redistricting reform?
I really don't believe so. What we need, of course, is accountability in redistricting. District 9 does make sense. As I'll say again later, this is an urban district. City of Toledo, City of Sandusky, City of Lorain, City of Cleveland. That makes sense. It is an urban city district. That is its characteristic, and it's good that we're all together in one district because we can address urban issues. About redistricting, everything, every proposal is gerrymandering. Most proposals that have been said in this room a major component is, well, let's make the districts competitive. Well, the district's going to be competitive. If the numbers in every district is going to be urban and suburban and split between Republicans and Democrats, that is exactly the same kind of gerrymandering than if the Republican Party does it or the Democratic Party does it. It's all gerrymandering. It's the goal of the gerrymandering And that's the only difference between them, except when it's in a neutral, so-called alleged neutral party, they are not accountable to voters for what the end result is. The Republican Party is responsible for this gerrymandering, and when the Democrats have their turn, they will be responsible for their gerrymandering, and the voters can come after our parties when that time comes.
Marcy Kaptur.
The Republican Party at the national level has engaged in the most calculated strategy for voter suppression I have ever seen. And I've been in politics for a while. If we look here at Ohio, it was reflected statewide when they took away Golden Week this past week, when we could have our citizens here in Ohio vote and register in the same week. That was taken away. They went all the way to the Supreme Court to do that. But in terms of gerrymandering, a state like Ohio, just think about this. We now have 16 seats in the House. We vote 50-50 in presidential elections. We're always, right on the bubble. Out of 16 seats, we should have 8 and 8 if everything was legit. But we know both parties play around the edges. So you'd say, well, okay, Ohio, so give the Republicans 9 and 7 because they control the state levers of government. Or 10 and 6. That's bad enough in a state that votes 50-50. But what they gave us was 12 and 4. That means that the votes of hundreds of thousands of Ohioans are absolutely tamped down because they do not have voices in the Congress of the United States. To me, that is morally wrong, it is politically wrong, it is legally wrong, and we have to find a means to fix that.
Moving on, Mr. May, you said one of the reasons that you ran, this is according to a story in the Plain Dealer, and on Cleveland.com, one of the reasons that you ran was to keep an openly gay Republican from winning the seat in the primary. You told the PD that you were politically opposed to having a gay representative in Congress. I wonder if you could explain the political basis of that. What is your political opposition to having a gay member of Congress represent you?
It's not that it's a gay member of Congress. It is about a gay Republican member of Congress. As a Republican, the Republican Party is the party of traditional values. And it will always, in my power, always be the party of traditional values. If that means I'm going to give the gay vote to the Democratic Party, so be it. But there are reasons for gay people to vote Republican besides the narrow interests of a gay agenda. And furthermore, it was more than my opponent was being gay. He was recalled from office for leading his city into a fiscal watch. Now, I'm from the generation of Dennis Kucinich. I remember Dennis Kucinich. Now, that's 35 years gone. I understand there's a new generation here today. But we're here to remember our history. It is irresponsible for a Republican Party to put up a candidate that is fiscally liberal and socially liberal. Moderation's fine, but my opponent in that primary, and I had the option of withdrawing, but I did not, because as I re-entered and kept going, it was clear that this person was totally unqualified to represent the Republican Party and even represent the Democratic Party. Thank you.
Congresswoman Kaptur, 30 seconds.
Let me just say in general, I believe in full civil rights, justice, and equality for all Americans, the LGBT community included. In my service in the Congress, I've served alongside Republican members who are gay, Democratic members who are lesbian. They are fine lawmakers. What I noted was early in my service, one of the Republican lawmakers who was gay but did not want to admit it, I watched the tormented life he led. And it is one of the reasons that I actually evolved in my own views about rights for all Americans. And if any society can do this right, America can do it right.
Before we go to our traditional question and answer period with the crowd, I have one more question for you. There's been a call by Republican leaders in Congress for a much bigger ground incursion to fight ISIS. And I wonder if you believe airstrikes are appropriate to deal with the Islamic State threat, or should more troops be committed? And further, should Congress get to vote on it? And I'll start with you, Congresswoman Kaptur.
Yes, well, first of all, I wanted to dedicate my remarks today to all of our military men and women, those who are serving us to allow us to have the rights of free speech here today, and all the veterans who are listening. We owe our freedoms to them and to their valor. In terms of ISIS, this is a real threat. It's one that we were aware of in the sense of terrorism and its many tentacles. The only way we can be successful in our military engagements there is to have a very broad coalition. The President is putting that together. The Vice President has been working 24/7 to try to get the partners to agree to participate in different ways. These threats are enormous to us, including spin-offs in, as we've seen, some even American citizens participating. So it's very important for us both to engage the broader diplomatic community and military community, including flyovers granted by Turkey and the engagement of other Arab nations, very important. But the United States cannot take sides, in my opinion, between the Sunni world and the Shia world, or we will be caught in the middle of a civil war that will be unending. We have to be able to engage with those who can fight on the ground, including tribal leaders, for example, in Iraq, who have sat back at the present time and not engaged. That's going to require a great deal of diplomatic effort. I believe our military is heavily engaged in these discussions now, and the only way we win is with a broad coalition.
Richard May.
I do believe that ground troops will be necessary. If airstrikes would win wars, we would have lost World War II with the bombing of London. It's going to take more in order to protect our country from terrorist attacks and our allies in the Middle East. However, they shift. You know, it is a difficult situation of trying to identify our enemies and at the same time, you know, protect our interests. You know, it's very much reminds me of the Cold War, where an enemy today was a friend tomorrow. But we are now in a situation where it's quite clear. I mean, Al-Qaeda was in caves. They were hiding. Now our enemies who are saying they want to kill us and kill journalists, beheaded journalists, they're saying, we are right here in the open. Come and get us. And we're coming to get you. And when they attack in America, they would attack in the cities like Cleveland and Toledo, not in a suburb or a small town. And this is vital importance to the 9th District for our safety and security in the near future.
Okay, before we get to our traditional question and answer period, the CEO of the City Club, Dan Moulthrop, has a little housekeeping to do, and here's Dan.
Thank you, Mike. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we're enjoying a debate between Ohio's District 9 congressional candidates, Marcy Kaptur, the incumbent, and a Democrat, and Richard May, a Republican. We will return to our candidates momentarily for our traditional City Club Q&A. We encourage you to formulate your questions for our speakers now and remind you that your questions should be brief and to the point. We welcome all of you here and those joining us via our live webcast sponsored by the University of Akron. Be sure to tune in to our Friday forums on 90.3 WCPN, WVIZ PBS 104.9 WCLV Idea Stream, or one of the many radio stations across the region and country that carry City Club programs. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Today's debate is sponsored by the Northeast Ohio Media Group, the City Club sponsor of politics and policy programming. We thank you for your support. Our community partner for today's program is the Center for Health Affairs. We thank you for your support. Today, we also welcome guests at tables hosted by the Center for Health Affairs, the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party, the Greater Cleveland Partnership, and Kaptur for Congress. We thank you all for your support. Additionally, we welcome students to the debate. Joining us today are students from the Cleveland School of the Arts. Their participation is made possible by a generous grant from the Development Pipeline Company. We thank you very much for your support. And now it's time for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding our microphones today are Director of Programming Stephanie Jansky and Marketing and Outreach Specialist Kirsten Pianka. Do we have our first question, please?
First of all, as a former longtime resident of the 9th District, now in the 11th District, I'd like to tell both candidates in this debate that I appreciate your respecting your constituents and your voters by doing this. My question relates to something that was already discussed, non-competitive congressional districts. And without dwelling on how we got here or whose fault it was one time or another, I would like to hear your ideas, and I'm going to start with Congresswoman Kaptur because Mr. May already indicated, if I understood him correctly, that he doesn't think the lack of competition is a problem. He can clarify that when his turn comes, but what would you propose, not only for yourself and for Congress, but for me as a citizen and for all of us who are concerned about the functioning of our democracy going forward, for ourselves, for our children, that we have functioning institutions when we need to correct in my opinion, the lack of competitiveness in the great majority of our congressional districts nationwide.
All right, let's get to the answer to that. Marcy Kaptur?
All right, thank you for a very good question. This is a serious question, and it's one I worry about a lot. I think we have to have two pieces to the answer. One piece is a way of drawing districts that respect community. So, for example, you don't split Parma. You don't take tales of communities and throw them to the wind. So we need a system. Iowa is a state that has managed through the state law to have a set of districts that more or less conform to the way the state actually lives and works. I think we have to look toward that kind of effort here. And secondly, in terms of campaign finance reform, you can't imagine what it's like to be a member of Congress and be faced with a race where $14 to $20 million could be placed against you in a race. My colleagues, many of them have left the Congress. This is a question for the United States of America to address. Of all the presidential candidates, what bill they will bring to the floor is H.R. 1 or Senate Bill 1 after they are sworn into the presidency to get this campaign spending under control. Even if you fix the districts so that they're more representative, the thought that wealthy people from Texas or New York or someplace else can throw millions of dollars against you. No normal human, this is not a job that is easy to begin with. But to have that measure of whether or not you should be in Congress is completely against any of the values embedded in our Constitution, and it is a big problem. Much more than when I was first elected.
And Richard May's turn now, and keeping in mind that the district that you're running for in its composition is a difficult one for any Republican to make an impact in.
Absolutely.
Given that that's the case and the question asker is saying it's not very competitive, can you provide a response?
Well, one part of the response is a major problem is the segregation of the wealthy and the poor and Republicans and Democrats. You know, you cannot have a city of Cleveland where Mitt Romney got 12% of the vote, and how do you draw a district from that? And if you're going to keep the city of Cleveland together, well, how is it going to be competitive? You know, you're going to, we're going to, busing Republicans to vote in the city of Cleveland? That's where they live. When I discuss urban issues and bringing back our cities, it is bringing back businesses and people with jobs. And if that means there might be Republicans, oops, it's an accident, really is. But, that segregation of Republicans and Democrats and the isolation that I face every day when I meet my friends from downstate and they ask me, how the heck can a precinct have not one voter for Mitt Romney? Well, I worked a black precinct during an election. I sat there and went, how the heck did Romney do so well? But also about funding the candidates. Well, that's exactly my problem. I don't even have $10,000 for this campaign. And that's not a criticism of the Republican Party. We have short-term goals and long-term goals. we need to win now. And the Democratic Party does exactly the same thing with their Democratic candidates in suburban areas. They underfund their Democratic candidates as well. Thank you.
Next question, please.
Good afternoon. I sit on the board of COSI here locally and the National Small Business Association out of Washington. And small businesses provide a large percentage of the employment in our country and have provided a large percentage of the growth in employment as we've recovered. One of the common concerns we hear time and again from small business owners is in regard to access to capital. They can't get the money that they need in order to grow their continue to grow their businesses. How would you suggest that we best address the issue of access to capital for small business owners?
And if I could piggyback on that, a Twitter question asked a similar point, but asked about getting rid of red tape in order for there to be business growth as well. If you could add that into your answer. That was for both? Okay, so Richard May, will you take that one first, please?
Well, in terms of capital being available, it's about if are people willing to give that capital, and that is going to take lower taxes, and incentives perhaps, so that they're willing to take a risk on young people like the young folks here who may want to start their own business. That's going to take, a improvement in, lowering our tax burden and, giving incentives to people to do that. And that's absolutely essential.
By red tape, I meant regulations.
And regulations as well. Well, thank you. Regulations as well. While we need reasonable regulations, as we saw at the end of W. Bush's term, where the lack of regulation caused our recession. Yet, we need enough regulation, a lack of regulation also, to make certain that the work of regulation is being done.
Marcy Kaptur, access to capital for small businesses and perhaps the burden of regulation.
All right, first of all, COSI is an incredible organization. In all the communities I've represented, I've never found anything like it. And I want to help you grow. I want to help you clone. You are extraordinary. Thank you for the work you do here. The 2008 financial crisis hit America very hard, and with the banking regulations that came down, they hit the small banks and small business much harder than big business, in my opinion. I think we need reform in the tax code that recognizes how important small business is in those early growth years. In terms of the SBA, we've tried to change the law to allow for SBA to be much more aggressive. You have one of the finest men here in Cleveland, Gil Goldberg, very experienced running the SBA. Anytime I've ever asked him to help a small business, he's come running. So I would say we're there to help you through the SBA mechanism at the federal level. Also at the U.S. Treasury Department, through our community development financial institutions, where we try to partner with small business and lending to make a deal work. And finally, with regulations, all I can say there is that anytime anyone comes to us and wants a regulation changed, we work with them. Sometimes I'm not powerful enough by myself to do it, but sometimes we get response from the department. So don't be silent. If something isn't working to your advantage, believe me, the very large enterprises have lots of representatives in Washington. The smaller ones oftentimes don't have their message coordinated. We don't get them to the departments because they don't ask for help. So you shouldn't be silent. You should be present.
Next question. Yes, sir.
Yes. My question is for Mr. May, and it concerns Social Security. As you know, we have an aging population in this country. Do you support the present form of Social Security and having the adjustments for increasing the funding as the government did back in the 80s, or do you support what some of the leaders of Congress, Republican leaders of Congress, wanting to privatize it?
And Mr. May, if I read the story in the Plain Dealer correctly, you're the beneficiary of Social Security disability.
Yes.
And I wonder how that informs the answer that you're about to give, if you can include your thoughts about that.
Absolutely. I mean, as someone on Social Security, the stability of Social Security is very important right here, absolutely. But it is becoming unsustainable. While we're having the ratio's become what? 2 or 3 workers for everyone on Social Security. I mean, rhetorically, my Social Security is based on the 23 years I worked, well, more than that I worked and paid into it. But of course, the truth of it is the workers that are paying for my Social Security benefits. And you're absolutely right. As you shake your head and going yes and no, you're right. But we do need to change it and increase the age before you retire, unfortunately. And we need to do what we can and even privatize it so that it's tied into a more stable funding source, than the 2 or 3 of our young people are going to be supporting me, and I thank you in advance. But we do need change because the current model is not going to survive much longer. Thank you.
Marcy Kaptur.
I'm a very strong supporter of Social Security, and it's an intergenerational compact. Social Security is an earned benefit program. When you work, you pay the FICA tax, your employer matches it, and it provides a disability insurance program for every single American. Social Security at the present time is sound through the year 2040. The actuaries with the recovery occurring now tell us that is going to so the actuaries think in terms of centuries, not decades. And they project far ahead as the economy recovers, the trust funds become more replenished, and Social Security is on a very good path right now with economic recovery.
So I'll have a follow-up to that, and this comes from Twitter before we take our next question. Mr. May, essentially, if you get elected, people are hiring you to work for them. The question is, if you're on disability now and unable to work, how would that work if you're a congressman? Would you be able to work then?
I am able to work. We are a country, and we have an American Disabilities Act passed by Senator Robert Dole and Democrats and bipartisan support. My disability is only limited to my ability to stand still like you are right now. That's why we're sitting.
It's what I'm best at.
Yes. And so my disability is only restricted to I cannot stand still like that. I would be in a great deal of pain if I try to do what you're doing right now. I can walk semi-okay, but not very quickly. Fortunately, I worked with my body for 23 years. And that's something I can do. Why I am now able and available to run for Congress is that, I need to, go get some training to go into another field of work. And I do have a lot of years of work ahead of me. And with the disability, I can take a full-time job and still be eligible for disability even if I don't take a red cent of it. It's a good program and it takes care of people like me, and it's entirely proper that we're doing it like this. And as a congressman, I'll be able, even if I'm in a wheelchair, I'll be able to work and do the job as well as anyone else.
Next question, please, from the audience.
Hello, I'm Patty Gascoigne Teleshak, seeking to serve as state representative in the 15th District, which is Parma, the whole city of Parma. My question is about national security. Mr. May, if you had 32 years in Congress, imagine, what the blockades would have been. If this was in your lap, the short premise is, according to Islamic doctrine, all charitable giving, even within the United States, 1/8 of it is set aside and it goes to jihad wherever. Now, there are definite funding streams coming from Islamic organizations and mosques within the United States.
Could you please
get
to the question? We are running out of time.
That
okay,
is the question.
Thank you.
Are the values of multiculturalism and diversity holding back an important step toward investigating mosques and Islamic organizations within our country, within our state, to stop funding from going to organizations like Al-Qaeda in Hamas
Okay,
in the
Richard.
name of jihad.
That one first.
You know, it is unfortunately a fact that a extreme fraction of a religion has basically declared war on our Western civilization, let alone America, because we dare allow women to serve in Congress, you know, show their face, drive a car, and that is not, you know, incompatible with American values. While we need to be sensitive to various cultures, it's a wonderful thing to be multicultural. That's why I live in the city of Cleveland, you know, because I appreciate living with other people from a background different than myself. But we understand that there are people looking to kill us because of what we are, the idea of us. And, you know, we have to work for that balance of, you know, not all Muslims are a threat to us, but we have to be careful for that balance of respecting our Muslim neighbors while at the same time looking for the threats among them, and reportedly it is indeed happening.
Marcy Kaptur.
Well, first of all, since 9/11, through the Department of Treasury, in fact, some brilliant minds of individuals who trace their roots to Ohio, we've been following the cash and clamping down on the flow of funds that could have supported terrorist organizations. And we've become much more sophisticated through the FBI, through all of our intelligence agencies in so doing. Let me say this. It would be a mistake for the United States of America and our people to condemn any group broadly, say, you know, whether it's Muslims or whatever group. In fact, we know many Muslim Americans, many Arab Americans have been our best sources of information to go after the terrorists who have harmed us. So we have to bridge to communities. We can't isolate people. For us to isolate any group, for us as a country, would be a huge mistake. Our multiculturalism is our greatest strength. There is no other country in the world like the United States of America. I happen to be a Catholic of Roman derivation. There was a time when they went to war in the name of religion. All right? I don't think that any great religion can keep its hands off the wars it's been involved in. So we have to be very conscious of world history, what's happened, and at this moment, bridge, bridge, bridge. Don't build walls, build bridges. And sometimes those bridges can provide information that can help the American people. Whether these bridges are built to Africa, whether they are built to Lebanon, whether they are built to Saudi Arabia, wherever it might be, or Pakistan and the rest. This is our greatest strength. Let's use it.
All right, thank you for your questions. We're now going to engage in the final question. As I mentioned earlier, this is a chance for each of you to spend 3 minutes both answering the question and summarizing your thoughts on the debate today. The final question is this, and it goes first to, who was first again? Marcy Kaptur, and then Richard May. Marcy Kaptur, the approval rating of Congress is extremely low, in the teens, just slightly above Ebola. And people have come to expect gridlock in Washington because of intractable political differences. On the big issues, how would you work to actually compromise and get legislation done?
I think that I have a good record of doing that. We each have to work on our own committees. But we have to have people with whom you can work. And sometimes if I go to the Republican side of the aisle, I am afraid to talk to some of my colleagues because I do not want them to feel that they're being watched in this conversation by others in the party who would like to knock them off in a primary. What's happening on the Republican side of the aisle is creating a very difficult situation to bridge difference. You've seen the differences between our two parties here a little bit today, and we have a wing of the Republican Party in the House that is they're sort of card-carrying members of the party of no. They're just against. They're even against their colleagues talking to Democrats. They'll deny it in public, but the reality is it happens on the floor. It happens in many committees. Now, the party of no. They said no to the auto rescue. They said no to the Recovery Act, which helped communities across this country not go bankrupt. They are no to extended unemployment benefits, no to extending the Clean Water Act, no to the Violence Against Women Act, no to equality for gay and lesbian members of our community, no to the extension of the Voting Rights Act, no to food for the needy, no to immigration reform, no to the Affordable Care Act, no to every single piece of legislation to make our country better. I should be fair, they did say yes to the government shutdown, which cost us billions of dollars. And frankly, that would have been poison. This kind of policy is poison to places like northeastern Ohio. Now, my opponent even opposes bringing the Republican convention to Cuyahoga County, to Cleveland. Imagine that. The mayor worked so hard, Mayor Jackson, Republicans, Democrats, everybody worked to bring business here. I don't think any single business supports that position here. We have to live in a real world, a world of rapid change and great diversity, where collaboration and cooperation mean everything, including in the Congress. There's an exciting surge of optimism here in the Cleveland area. I see it all in the boom cranes, a feeling that our time is coming, that a new day is coming. We're on the verge of something really great here. We have to have a positive vision and people who want to innovate and work to collaborate to make those visions happen. We have to say yes to the future. We can't penalize Republicans that work with Democrats. We can't have Republicans who have a majority in the Congress and literally shoot their own members if they try to cooperate. Only then will we achieve something great, when collaboration and partnership mean something domestically within communities as well as within the Congress. I thank you respectfully for listening today, and I would ask for the vote of those who are listening. Thank you for coming today.
Richard May.
Let me just clarify that my so-called opposition to the convention coming was clearly a joke if people read the original piece. And because I know when the convention's going on how many phone calls and emails I'm going to get from various people saying, oh, come join our protest, come to our convention over here. It's not necessarily that much fun at a convention, is it, Marcy? And it is work as well. And that's what my joke was centered around. About the parties, you yourself was almost challenged in the Democratic primary because you're too moderate, Marcy. Don't you know that? Corey Huffman, who is now running as an independent candidate as a write-in, was going to run against you in the primary, is now running as a write-in candidate. And gee, you know, you're just too much like me, Marcy. Don't you know that? But regardless, as I finish today, I'd like to thank Dan, Stephanie, and the rest of the City Club staff, Michael McIntyre for moderating, and Congressman Kaptur for coming here and agreeing to this debate. And as a former Democrat, and even worse than that, a former manager of a liberal newspaper, I understand the fierce votes you're taking. I understand why your career is like this. I do understand. But, we have changed in our own ways in the last 32 years. But that does not change that the basic liberal philosophy is not serving us well in the 9th Congressional District. For the future of our area, we must have new approaches to stop the downward slide of the 4 cities in our district. Today, I speak as a leader of the Republican Party in the city of Cleveland, not some academic from a comfortable home. After this election, win or lose, I will be available to anyone from any party, and I have a long history of that as a leader in the city of Cleveland, who is sincere in their desire to rescue the cities we love. And I'm Richard May, and I ask for your support. Thank you so much.
And now you've been holding your applause, but go ahead and show your applause for both candidates, Marcy Kaptur and Richard May. And now Dan Moulthrop.
Thank you, Mike. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been enjoying a debate between Ohio's 9th District Congressional candidates, Marcy Kaptur, the incumbent and a Democrat, and Richard May, a Republican. Thank you, Representative Kaptur. Thank you, Mr. May. Thank you, Mike McIntyre, our moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much. Our forum is now adjourned.